The champagne cork popped with a sound that felt like a gunshot to my chest. My brothers, Timothy and Robert, were toasting their victory while I sat at the far end of the conference table, staring at the termination papers they had just slid across the mahogany surface. To the future of Morrison Industries, Timothy declared, raising his glass high. Finally free to reach its full potential. Just the tech support, Robert added with a smirk, looking directly at me. That's all you ever were, Natalie. Dad kept you around out of pity, but we're running a business, not a charity. I picked up the papers with steady hands, though inside I was seething. 23 years of my life dedicated to this company, and they'd reduced me to just the tech support. My name is Natalie Morrison, and I'm 41 years old. I was 17 when I started working at my father's manufacturing company, Morrison Industries. Back then, it was a struggling operation making basic household fixtures, doorknobs, hinges, cabinet handles. Nothing revolutionary, nothing special. Just enough to keep the lights on and food on the table. My brothers were different from me from the start. Timothy, 5 years older, went to business school and came back with an MBA and an ego the size of Texas. Robert, 3 years older, studied marketing and returned convinced he was Don Draper reincarnated. They wore expensive suits, talked about synergy and market penetration, and looked at spreadsheets like they were holy scripture. I was the weird one, the girl who preferred the factory floor to the boardroom, who spent her free time taking apart machines to see how they worked, who taught herself coding because I thought it was fun. When other teenagers were at parties, I was in Dad's workshop tinkering with designs and dreaming up improvements. You've got the mind of an engineer, Dad used to say, ruffling my hair as I showed him my latest creation. Maybe even an inventor. But to Timothy and Robert, I was just their little sister playing with tools. When I developed our first computerized manufacturing system at 22, they called it Natalie's Little Project. When I created the smart lock system that became our bestseller, they presented it to clients as a team effort while I sat silent in the corner running the technical demos. The truth was, I'd been the driving force behind every major innovation at Morrison Industries for the past 2 decades. While my brothers focused on sales and marketing, I revolutionized our entire product line. Smart locks that could be controlled by phone apps, hinges with built-in sensors for security systems, cabinet hardware with fingerprint recognition. Every patent filed under the company name had my signature as the inventor. But there was something my brothers never bothered to understand about patent law, something that would soon become very, very important. Are you going to sign those papers or just stare at them? Timothy asked impatiently, checking his Rolex. We have a meeting with the Koreans in an hour. Big distribution deal for the smart home line. The smart home line. My smart home line. The one I developed over 5 years of late nights and weekends, perfecting every circuit, every line of code, every mechanical component. Of course, I said quietly, signing my name with a flourish. I'll clean out my office today. That won't be necessary, Robert interjected. We've already had security pack your things. They're in the lobby. We'll need your key card and company phone before you leave. 23 years, reduced to a cardboard box in the lobby. I stood up, placed my key card and phone on the table, and headed for the door. Oh, and Natalie, Timothy called out, the non-compete clause means you can't work for any competitor for 5 years. Just so we're clear. I turned back and gave them a smile. Not my usual accommodating smile, something sharper, crystal clear. Timothy, enjoy your meeting with the Koreans. As I walked out of the building I'd spent half my life in, carrying a pathetic box of personal items, I pulled out my personal phone and made a single call. Harrison, it's Natalie Morrison. Remember that contingency plan we discussed? It's time to execute it. Harrison Chun was my patent attorney, a friend from my brief stint at engineering school before Dad guilt-tripped me into joining the family business. He'd been begging me for years to file patents under my own name, warning me about the risks of assigning everything to the company. They finally did it, he asked, not sounding surprised. Just now voted you out 2-1? Dad's shares were split between them after he died, so they had the majority. And they have no idea about none. I confirmed, I said. They never read the fine print, never asked why some patents were filed differently than others. They just assumed everything belonged to the company. Here's what my MBA-educated brothers failed to understand. There are two types of patent assignments. The first assigns all rights to the company immediately upon filing. The second, the type I'd been using for the past 5 years, grants the company a license to use the patent while I retained ownership. It was a subtle difference in paperwork, one that required careful reading to catch. But Timothy and Robert never read the technical documents. That was Natalie's department. How many patents are we talking about? Harrison asked. 17, I said, settling into my car. Every product in the smart home line, every improvement to the manufacturing process, the entire codebase for the app ecosystem. Morrison Industries has been operating under license agreements tied to my employment, which terminated today. I agreed. How fast can you prepare the cease and desist letters? I've had them drafted for 2 years, Harrison admitted. I just need to add today's date and hit send. Natalie, are you sure about this? This is going to get ugly. I thought about 23 years of being overlooked, dismissed, and diminished. Of watching my brothers take credit for my innovations while treating me like a glorified mechanic. Board meetings where they'd interrupt my technical explanations to tell clients, "Don't worry about all that complicated stuff."
Send them, I said.
Every single one. That weekend was quiet. I spent it in my home workshop, the one place where I'd always felt truly myself. I'd converted my garage into a maker's space years ago, complete with 3D printers, CNC machines, and every tool I could ever need. This was where the real magic happened, where ideas became prototypes, became products. My phone buzzed occasionally, messages from former colleagues wondering what had happened, a few friends checking in. I ignored them all. I had work to do. Monday morning arrived with the kind of beautiful sunshine that felt like the universe was in on the joke. At exactly 9 a.m., as I knew Timothy and Robert would be settling into their offices with their morning coffee, Harrison's letters would be arriving, via courier, email, and fax simultaneously. No chance of claiming they didn't receive them. At 9:07, my phone rang.
Timothy.
I let it go to voicemail. At 9:09, Robert called. Also straight to voicemail. At 9:13, they called together, from Timothy's office phone. This time, I answered. "Good morning, brothers. How was the meeting with the Koreans? What have you done?" Timothy's voice was so loud, I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "I've exercised my rights as a patent holder," I said calmly. "Since I'm no longer employed by Morrison Industries, the license agreements for my patents are void. You'll need to cease and desist all manufacturing, sales, and distribution of the affected products immediately." "You can't do this," Robert sputtered. "Those patents belong to the company. You developed them as an employee." Actually, if you check the filing documents, you'll see that I developed them as an independent contractor. Remember 5 years ago, when you restructured my employment to save on benefits? You had me sign a new contract that classified me differently for tax purposes. That change allowed me to retain ownership of any patents I developed. Silence. I could practically hear them scrambling for the documents. But you still assigned them to the company," Timothy protested weakly. "I licensed them to the company. Big difference. The license was contingent on my continued employment. Page 47 of my contract, subsection 12b. But I'm guessing neither of you read that far." "This is blackmail," Robert shouted.
No.
"This is business. Isn't that what you told me on Friday? You're running a business, not a charity." "The smart home line represents 73% of our revenue." Timothy's voice had gone from angry to panicked. "You're trying to destroy Dad's company." "Dad's company made doorknobs and hinges," I replied. "I transformed it into a smart home manufacturer. And you just fired the person responsible for that transformation." "We'll sue." "Please do. I'd love to see you explain to a judge how you never bothered to read the contracts you signed. How you never questioned why the tech support was named as inventor on every major patent. How you voted out the person whose innovations kept your company afloat." More silence. Then Timothy's voice, smaller now. "What do you want?"
"What I've always wanted," I said. "Respect.
Recognition. And fair compensation for my contributions." "We can't just undo the termination," Robert said. The board would need to vote, and we look like idiots. Then I guess you'll need to find new products to sell. Might I suggest going back to basic doorknobs, though even those might be tricky. I hold the patents on the improved manufacturing process. I hung up and went back to my workshop. On my bench sat my latest project, a revolutionary smart home hub that would make everything Morrison Industries sold obsolete. I'd been developing it in secret for months, knowing this day would come eventually. The calls continued throughout the day. Timothy and Robert, their lawyers, board members who'd suddenly realized their cash cow was about to disappear. I ignored them all, focusing on my work. Tuesday brought a formal letter from Morrison Industries' legal team, threatening action for corporate espionage and theft of trade secrets. Harrison responded with a detailed breakdown of exactly which patents I owned and why their claims were baseless. He also pointed out that any attempt to continue selling products based on my patents would result in immediate legal action. Wednesday, the panic really set in. Their Korean distributors were threatening to cancel the deal. Existing orders couldn't be fulfilled without violating the cease and desist. The stock price had dropped 30% on rumors of production difficulties. Thursday, Timothy showed up at my house. He looked terrible, unshaven, wrinkled suit, the kind of desperation in his eyes I'd never seen before. "Natalie, please," he said when I opened the door. "We need to talk." I let him in, but didn't offer coffee.
Petty?
Maybe. Satisfying? Definitely. "We were wrong," he said without preamble. "Robert and we let our egos get in the way. We've always been jealous of how easily things came to you. How Dad lit up when you showed him your inventions. We're the ones with the fancy degrees, but you're the one who made the company successful. And yet you called me just the tech support." He winced. "I know. It was cruel and stupid. We convinced ourselves that sales and marketing were what mattered, that the products would sell themselves. But without your innovations, you have nothing to sell." I finished. The board is furious. We're facing lawsuits from distributors. Our credit line is in jeopardy. And Robert had a panic attack yesterday. Had to go to the hospital. I felt a twinge of sympathy, but pushed it down. They'd had 23 years to show me respect. It had taken less than a week without me for them to realize my value. "What are you proposing?" I asked. "Come back," he said immediately. "Full partnership, equal voting rights, and retroactive compensation for all patents. We'll restructure everything. Make you Chief Technology Officer. Whatever you want." "I don't want to be Chief Technology Officer," I said. "I want to be what I've always been, the heart of this company's innovation. But this time, with the recognition and compensation I deserve. Name your terms." I've been thinking about this moment for days, years really. 51% ownership. I want majority control. Timothy's face went white. The board would never approve that. Then the board can watch Morrison Industries go back to making basic hardware while I launch my own company with my patents and innovations. Your choice. "You'd really destroy Dad's legacy over this?" "Dad's legacy was teaching me to value my worth," I said firmly. "You and Robert destroyed it when you decided I was expendable. I'm offering to rebuild it, but on my terms." He left without agreeing. But I knew they'd be back. The numbers didn't lie. Without my patents, Morrison Industries was worth less than the building it operated in. They'd spent years building a sales and distribution network for products only I could legally produce. It took another week of negotiations, threats, and increasingly desperate offers before they finally agreed. 51% ownership, full control over all technical development, and a seat on the board as Chief Innovation Officer, a title I created for myself. The signing ceremony was held in the same conference room where they'd terminated me 2 weeks earlier. The champagne was gone, replaced by somber faces and legal documents. Timothy and Robert looked diminished, their usual bravado replaced by hard-learned humility. "For what it's worth," Robert said as I signed the papers that would make me majority owner, "we're sorry. We should have valued you from the beginning." "Yes," I agreed. "You should have." But I wasn't interested in dwelling on the past. I had a company to run, innovations to develop, and a legacy to build. The girl they dismissed as just the tech support now owned the kingdom they tried to rule without her. The first thing I did as majority owner was institute a company-wide patent review. Turns out, I wasn't the only one whose contributions had been overlooked. Several engineers had ideas that had been shelved because they weren't marketable enough, according to my brother's narrow vision. Within 6 months, we'd launched 3 new product lines based on previously ignored innovations. The smart home hub I'd been developing became our flagship product, integrating all our existing systems into one seamless experience. Timothy and Robert, to their credit, adapted to the new reality. They focused on what they did best, sales and marketing, while leaving the innovation to me and my expanded team. They even started attending my technical presentations, finally bothering to understand the products they were selling. The company thrived under the new structure. Turns out, when you value the people who create your products as much as the people who sell them, success follows naturally. We went from a regional manufacturer to a national brand, then international. The patents I'd retained became the foundation for an entire ecosystem of smart home products. But the real satisfaction came from smaller moments. Like when a young engineer came to me with an idea and knew it would be heard, not dismissed. Like when my name appeared first on the company letterhead, Morrison Industries, a Natalie Morrison company. Like when Timothy introduced me at a conference as the genius behind everything we make. They'd thought I was just the tech support, a replaceable cog in their machine. They'd celebrated with champagne when they voted me out, confident in their decision to remove the weak link. They'd learned the hard way that in a technology company, the person who holds the patents holds the power. And sometimes the quiet one in the corner, the one taking notes and solving problems, is the most dangerous person in the room. Not because I'd planned revenge. I'd simply protected myself. Not because I wanted to destroy them. I wanted to build something better. But because when you systematically undervalue someone for decades, when you dismiss their contributions and diminish their worth, you create your own downfall. My brothers had thought they were the kings of Morrison Industries. They'd forgotten that every king needs a kingdom, and I'd been the one building it all along. When they kicked me out, they discovered that without the builder, all they had was an empty castle and a throne with no power. Now, I sit in that conference room, my conference room, and look at the framed patent certificates lining the walls. Each one a reminder of what I built, what I protected, and what I've earned. The champagne cork had sounded like a gunshot that day. But it wasn't my funeral they were celebrating. It was their own.